Hello, and welcome to MYOGA Basics. We'll be covering some foundation, fundamental practices, which will be building blocks that will work with moving forward through the weeks. This practice focuses on sitting tall on the ground, settling in and tuning in, easy opening of shoulders, ankles, toes, wrists, fingers, and the beginning of spinal flexibility. In order to begin the practice, find yourself comfortably on your mat or your space. You may want to sit on something to help release your hips and allow you to sit cross-legged. If that doesn't work, feel free to sit either on your shins or with your legs out in front. And bring yourself to sit up tall. Turn your attention inwards. Even if your eyes are open, get a sense of how you connect to the ground through your legs, through the bottom of your pelvis, and noticing your spine, and feel for where is your balance, where's your weight. Are you leaning forward at all over your thighs, or slumped back over your tailbone? See if you can find a sense of lightness. I like to think of my head being like a hot air balloon being drawn up towards the sky, and the spine just hanging from it. See if you can get a sense of the back of your skull being drawn upwards, which helps lift the sternum in front, creating more space for the breath to come into the bottom of the lungs. And as you sit tall and you tune inwards, we'll do an internal check of how you are in this moment. What is present with you? Mentally, emotionally, physically, are there any areas of tension or distraction? And with this practice, if you've done much yoga before, then I invite you to come into beginner's mind, to come into each movement, each exercise, each aspect of your body as though for the first time. Let this time be a meditation in motion. These practices will build in intensity over time, so if we can do the simplest things with awareness and precision, then the complicated things are not so complicated. And with each practice, we tune into our inner wisdom and also the wisdom of all of the teachers that have come before, as well as the bigger picture, however you understand that. The mantra that we use to tune in is Om Namo Gurudev Namo. So try bringing your hands together at your heart, thumbs connected in towards your sternum to remind the sternum to lift up. Take a few slower, deeper breaths, noticing the sound of the breath as you breathe in and out through your nose as best you can. You might be hearing the breath in your nose and any sort of congestion you have there. If you're already familiar with Ujjayi pranayama, which we'll learn later in this first level, but if you know that pranayama, that breathing practice, feel free to move into that, in which case you might be hearing the breath in the throat. If you're not ready to put your voice into the mantra just yet, then take in the meaning. Find out what it means for you to tune into the wisdom within and without. If you are joining in, breathe in for the first of 3. As you inhale, bring your arms up overhead, and as you exhale, stretch them back behind you. And continue circling so that you're inhaling up in front, exhaling, reaching back behind you, lengthening through your elbows, through your fingers, and allowing that circling of the arms to bring your attention into your shoulders. Feel how when you lift your arms up, you lift your waist up, your spine up, you grow tall through your torso. Keep that height as you reach back behind you, stretch across the chest, and notice any sounds in your shoulders or any sensations, any differences left to right in your shoulders. The next time that you release your arms down behind you, bring your fingers to the ground behind your back and release your legs out in front of you, lengthening out through your legs, bringing them parallel to each other. And as you bring your toes to point up towards the sky, look to see that your feet are parallel. The middle of your feet are parallel to each other. Adjust your hands so that you don't have any strain in your wrists. You might need to be on your fingertips or turn your fingertips back or out to the sides. As you push the ground away with your hands or your fingers, feel how that lifts your spine up, lifts your rib cage, lifts up so that you have more room for the breath. And then look again at your feet and imagine that your breath is moving all the way down into your ankles. So that as you inhale, you draw your toes back towards you, and as you exhale, you stretch your toes forward towards the front edge of the mat. Inhale and draw back, and exhale and stretch forward, listening to the breath, noticing what it sounds like, and coordinating your breath into your feet. So we're starting out really simple, getting the breath coordinated with the movement of the feet. Inhale, draw your toes back, and exhale, stretch forward. And look at your toes and see if the big toes and the little toes are both extending forward and drawing back towards you to the same extent on each foot. Or can you sense any differences across each foot or between the 2 feet? Taking a couple more movements forward and back. Open up the front and back of your ankles, noticing how this action, even though it's focused in the ankles, radiates all the way up through your legs. If you're sinking into your hands, push the ground away. Find space for your ribs, for your lungs. This next time that you draw your toes back, bring your feet together, the inner edges of your feet together. And then think of drawing the outer edges of your feet back towards you as you inhale. And as you exhale, bring the outer edges of your feet towards each other, like your feet are praying. So it's as though you're going to plant all of the toes, left to right, against each other, like you're closing a book. Then inhale and open, drawing the outer edges of the feet back, and exhale and close. And this one is a little bit tricky. This is where you start to create pathways between the brain and the body, if they're not already there. So the trick with this is to keep your big toes pointing straight up, especially when you take your feet around towards each other. They'll tend to want to go away from you. But if you keep your feet perpendicular to the floor, then you get a better stretch in your outer ankles. So coordinating the breath, inhaling, drawing back, noticing how your knees roll in, your thighs roll in, and then exhaling and taking your feet towards each other, and noticing how that radiates up through your legs. Doing one more. And then as you finish that one, bring your feet wide enough from each other that you can make big circles with your feet without your big toes touching each other. Dropping down towards the inside so the big toes move towards each other. And just pause there for a second and see how far you drop down and whether or not there's any difference left to right in your feet. Then continuing on with big circles, opening out, and when you get to the outside, pause for a second when your little toes are dropping towards the ground, and again, see if there's any difference. If your knees are bending, press through your heels so your legs are long and that action in your ankles radiates right up to your hips. Then continue on with the circles. Inhale and exhale each circle, so big circles. Inhale and exhale. Looking to see if there's any difference left to right in your feet, if one ankle is more open, or if you can sense that that might also be related to your knee or your hip higher up. Next time that you inhale, change the direction, heading around the other way. And even though your focus is on your breath and the circling action of your feet, keep pushing the ground away with your hands, lengthening up through your spine so you're not sinking into your tailbone or into your wrists. As you bring your feet up this next time, bring your legs parallel to each other, about front hip width distance apart. And then flop your feet side to side. So the whole lengths of the legs flop side to side. And see if you can get your big toes and your little toes to flop close to the floor. So it might start to sound like windshield wipers, if you find that. But also notice any difference left to right here, if one foot flops more easily, if one side is more open. And keep the breath flowing as you're windshield wipering your legs. Bring your legs back to center. We're going to come around into toe sit. As you bring your knees underneath you, as you come up onto your knees, curl your 10 toes under. Be sure to get your little toes. This may be very intense if you've never spent much time on your toes or your toes have gotten tight. If that's the case, you might need to come up onto your knees and minimize the weight that drops back onto the heels and into the toes. Finding where your heels are right under your sits bones, under your butt cheeks, so you're not sitting between your heels but directly on them. If that's too intense, come up onto your knees, or use a block underneath your knees. Then bring your hands, the backs of your hands, alongside your upper ribs, so that the front of your wrists face forward and your fingers, your middle fingers, point straight back. Your fingers are more behind you than they are alongside you, so you can already, hopefully, start to feel the top side of the wrist stretching. Then to emphasize that stretch in the wrist, inhale into the backs of your hands. Inhale your rib cage out sideways, expand it into your hands. Then as you exhale, feel how the rib cage releases back to center. If you want to deepen the stretch in your wrist, then drop your elbows farther down towards the ground. But check on your next inhale, when the ribs expand, if you can breathe into that. Breathe in and out through your nose, letting your jaw relax, your shoulders drop down. Feel free to come up onto your knees at any time. You may need to bob up and down if you're really feeling your toes as we focus on the wrists. I call this stretch the chicken. The next time you exhale, release your hands out from the sides and hold on to your right hand with your left and draw the fingers and the thumb of your right hand back with your left. Tucking your right elbow in towards your ribs and releasing your shoulders onto your back and isolating the underside of your wrist. And breathing as though you're breathing into your wrist. Catching your thumb so that you get the whole side of the wrist that includes the thumb. Use your next exhale to release over to the other hand. If you find your jaw clenching or your tongue engaged with the roof of your mouth, let your mouth soften. Your face soften. This next time that you exhale, let go. It might feel good to shake your hands out once you've released. Then uncurl your poor little toes and press the front of your feet into the ground behind your knees. Bring your fingertips underneath your shoulders and roll down the lengths of your hands to stretch where your fingers connect to your palms before you plant your palms down. Push the ground away and roll your back up towards the sky. Pause here, letting your head drop down, and align your knees under your front hip bones, about a fist width apart. See that you can't see your feet, and press the front of your feet, your ankles, into the floor. Pull your belly up into your low back and see if there's any more stretch along your back that feels good. This is cat pose. Next time you inhale, lift your tailbone towards the sky and let your spine follow until your head is also lifted. Pause here and see if you can slide your shoulder blades back and in away from your neck towards the space behind your heart. Keep the back of your neck long and think of having the weight of a small child on your back. Let your torso sway towards the ground. If you can't clear your shoulders back, your hands are either too far forward or too close together. Set them under broad shoulders so you have space to open your heart in between. This is cow pose. Then move with your breath. Exhale and press the floor away as you leverage your back towards the sky, opening hands and feet. Inhale as you allow gravity to pull your torso towards the floor and focus on clearing your shoulders back from your neck. Move at your pace of breathing. This next time that you exhale, press your hips back over your heels. You might want to take your knees wider if your hips are tight or your head doesn't rest on the ground. Push the ground away with your hands, helping to tuck your butt back over your heels and lengthen your low back. See if you can feel the breath in your low back. Once you're tucked in and your head is resting on the floor or your hands or a block, wrap your hands around your legs and let your shoulders relax forwards towards your neck. This is child's pose. Rest here and take in what you've done today. Remember, we're building over time, so we're setting very simple yet key foundation structures. Trust the longer journey. Notice what you feel in your body, what your mind is saying, and where your energy is focused. Come into your breath. Let it bridge your mind to your body. With your next inhale, uncurl upwards and lift your arms overhead. As you exhale, draw them down along your midline. Namaste means I bow to the light, the divine that you are. I like to begin at home, so start with yourself. Give yourself a namaste. If you're then ready to acknowledge me or anyone else you're practicing with, then extend that yogic recognition of unity outwards. Namaste.